What's up everybody? Mike here with Trail 7. We've got a really cool video for you today. We've showed you already how to install one amplifier into your Jeep. Today we're going to show you how to install two. So we're going to use a dual amp setup. Now why would you do that? Potentially to give you some better power, more power, bigger power, just to have some different configuration options for the system that you're going to put together. So today we're going to show you how easy this is to install into your Jeep. We're going to show you what Trail 7 brings to you as our plug and play bundles. We're going to show you a couple different options with the amplifiers. Just so you know, we're using here two WaveTech amplifiers. Our bundles, when we put them together, whether it's a kicker amplifier, an Alpine amplifier, a JBL, an Audison, a Hertz, an audio control, whatever bundle we put together, the installation is going to apply for this video here. So fundamentally, it's going to be the same. Now you may have some different connections onto your amplifier, which I'll kind of talk about while we're connecting this amplifier here, so you understand how to connect yours when you receive it. There may be some different landings, et cetera, but again, fundamentally, it's all the same. The installation, all of this here will go into your Jeep with either one of these bundles that you choose from here. Just so you know, this applies to the 2018 to 2023 Jeep Wrangler JL and to the 2020-2023 Jeep Gladiator JT. This does not apply to the 2024 only for one reason. This module here is what's going to change in your 2024. The dash assembly is of course slightly different with the new screen, but this module here, this harness here in the 2024 is a little different. We do have a video of that scenario coming out shortly as well. So with that said, let me talk about a couple of things that we put together for you. It seems like a lot going on here. It's not just wiring harnesses that we prepare for you, so everything is plug and play with the connections that you need. The connectors are already attached. Everything will be labeled for you. The video to show you how to get to the point of being done. We're going to walk you through that. We're going to get you over the finish line. Right. So starting over on this side, we have our amp harnesses. This is set up for either a factory radio or an aftermarket radio. Today's demonstration, we're going to show you how to connect this to a factory radio, which is using this pack module and this harness here. In this case here, you would use this harness that we provide. Depending on the drop-down option in the product page, will let us know how to build the bundle for you. But this is going to use this option here, which is just connecting to the amplifier, connecting to the pack module with the connections, etc. Again, I'll show you how this connects and how this installs into the Jeep once we get there. This also applies to a factory amplified Jeep and a non-factory amplified Jeep. We'll put a couple of pictures here so you can determine which your Jeep is. Basically, if you have a subwoofer, a factory subwoofer in your Jeep, if you have a 4-door or a 2-door JL, then you're going to have a sub in the back cargo area. If you have the Gladiator like we have here, the subwoofer is behind the rear bench. But again, we'll have some pictures down here so you can easily determine by look if you have a factory amplified or non-factory amplified. That also matters when you pick your bundle so we know which harness to prepare for you. This harness here that I just showed you is for the non-factory amplified. If you have the factory amplified system, we're going to provide this harness here. What this is a factory amplifier bypass harness. This is going to connect to your amplifier. This is going to bypass your factory amplifier with these connections here. And this is going to allow us to use the existing speaker wire that are already in your Jeep, so we don't need to run new speaker wires. Same applies for the non-factory amplified here. This just connects to the pack module, which I'll show you how we get in there. RCAs, of course, your sub wire going from your mono amplifier to your subwoofer, your power harness going from your distribution block, and I'm going to explain all this when I get into it, going from your distribution block to your fuse block underneath the hood, your ground wires, the pack module, which is your interface, which is going to connect the factory radio to the amplifier. This is going to give you your RCAs that are needed. The T-harness, that's going to connect to the back of the factory radio, and that's going to connect the pack module and connect the harness into. Again, I'm going to show all this to you, so don't worry about keeping track of what's going on here. We'll show you step by step. A couple of very basic tools, which we'll put a list here for you so you can see all the tools, and it's not that many. We'll also have options for a couple of amp brackets. These brackets here mount underneath the seats, one underneath the driver's side seat, which is this guy here, one underneath the passenger side, which is this guy over here. These do not fit into a 2-door, so we won't have these as just an inclusion of the package. These only fit for the 4-door, so these will be options to include into your package. Just know that these are universal brackets, so they have a number of holes on the bracket. If the amplifier that you choose matches up with the hole, great. If it doesn't, which is probably going to be more than likely, you can either drill holes to match, or what we often do is just take a piece of Velcro tape and just Velcro tape the amp to the bracket. You just don't want the amp sliding around, which is what it's doing. Once the seat's on here anyway, that's not going anywhere. So you can either drill holes, you can find holes that line up to the best of it and orient the amp that's going to match up to it and use some zip ties to strap it in there, or you can just use some double-sided Velcro tape there, like we have going on here with these guys. All right, now that I've shown you or talked about what we have going on here, let's get specific with some amplifier connections so you understand where to land the wiring on your amplifiers. I'll walk you through like fundamentals because your amplifier again could be different from what you're seeing on here. Let's start with the 4-channel amp. For one, you have a fuse distribution block. You'll have one battery wire that runs from the battery fuse block to the fuse block here. This is going to have 2 outputs to each amplifier, right? So you're going to mount this on the 4-channel bracket. The main power is going to run into here, and you're going to have one wiring that runs from here to the 4-channel amp and from here to the mono amp. So let's talk about the 4-channel amp here and the connections. So this amplifier is set up with the designated channels, meaning channel 1, channel 2, channel 3, channel 4. Just so you know, all channel 1s are going to be your white wires, and you'll understand what I mean when I start landing the wires. So channel 1 is your white wire. Channel 1 is also your left front area of the vehicle. So in this case, it would be your top dash and your knee panel speaker, and that's going to be white. Channel 2 is going to be your right front, which is going to be your top dash and your right knee area, and this is going to be gray. Channel 3 is going to be your rear left sound bar, and this is going to be green. Channel 4 is going to be your right rear sound bar, and this is going to be purple. So for this vehicle, there are 2 speakers for each corner that come out of a factory. You may have a component set that may change that to 1 speaker in each corner. Regardless, each corner is a quadrant. Channel 1, left front. Channel 2, right front. Channel 3, left rear. Channel 4, right rear. This amplifier does have them marked off, channel 1, 2, 3, 4. Some 4-channel amplifiers have it channel 1 and channel 2, and you'll just need to look to see if they are meaning channel 1 is your front speakers and channel 2 is your rear speakers, which is how the kicker amplifiers are set up. So I'll show you how to land the wires once we get into the Jeep. Just so you know, all amplifiers are going to have that same type of configuration, and we'll put a little chart here so you can understand that as well. For the power, you're going to have your power from your fuse block, from your distribution, your remote wire. This is what's going to connect to the radio, and this is going to trigger the amplifier to turn on. And then your ground wire, this of course is going to land on a ground bolt underneath the driver's side seat there, which I'll show you. On the other side of this amplifier are the RCAs. The RCAs are going to connect to the pack module. I'll show you when we get into there. Now let's move on to how this is going to connect to the mono amp, which is really only going to connect a remote wire from this amplifier to the remote wire port on the mono amplifier. And what that's going to do is once the radio turns on, it's going to trigger this amplifier to turn on, which is also going to trigger the mono amplifier to turn on. And just to make this clear also, your 4-channel amp is powering your speakers, your mono amp is powering your subwoofer. So this is, you're going to get more power out of a mono amp typically than you would get out of, say, a 5-channel amp that has that 5th channel for the subwoofer. This is now separating them out so you can control them and usually get more power out of this type of setup. So let's show you how to connect the 4-channel over to a mono amplifier. So this is the mono amp. It says mono up here. For this amp here, you have 2 blocks. You have 2 positives and 2 negatives. You can, of course, run 2 subs off of this amp if you wanted to. Since we're going to demonstrate just installing 1 subwoofer, you're going to connect 1 to the positive side and 1 to the negative side. For the power, as I showed you on the 4-channel bracket there, it has that distribution block. You're going to connect your power to the other side of the distribution block. You're going to connect your ground. There's a ground bolt underneath the passenger seat. We'll show you all of this. And this is the remote wire that you're going to connect to the 4-channel amplifier. Now I'll show you real quick how the RCAs are going to land on the pack module. Again, I'm going to show you this inside the Jeep, but just to show you out here. This is the interface unit that's connecting the amplifiers via RCAs to the factory radio. So you have the 6 ports here. You have 3 pairs of RCAs. 2 pairs of RCAs are going to come from the 4-channel amp, and that last pair is going to come from the mono amplifier. The pack module is labeled on the bottom side, showing which channels and the sub outputs. So now that we've showed everything to you here, let's go ahead and show you how easy this is to install into your Jeep. So as you can see, the driver's side seat has already been removed, but don't worry, we have a video that we're going to show here in a second that demonstrates how to remove that seat. We also have the passenger side seat out because we're going to put an amplifier underneath the passenger side, so the way that the passenger comes out is the same way as the driver comes out. We're also going to show you a video of how to run the power in this exact vehicle to install an amplifier. That power run, regardless, is going to be the same, so we're going to show that to you in a second. Before I show that to you though, I do want to show you how to remove this trim panel piece. There's a couple of clips come off, a 10mm bolt comes off. Also want to do just a quick high level of explaining what we're going to do so while we're in the Jeep we can walk through some parts and you know what to expect. We're going to have to remove the factory radio. So we're going to move a trim panel piece below the factory radio, take the radio out to connect the pack module behind that. We're going to remove the glove box because that pack module is going to mount behind the glove box there. When we route our wiring, we're going to go through this transmission tunnel here in the middle. So the 9-wire, the amp harness, the RCAs are going to route through this transmission tunnel. The power wire is going to run up along the trim panel here, and there's ground bolts on each side where it's going to mount to. So for now, let's go ahead and show you how to remove this trim panel piece, and then we're going to clip over to show you the video of removing the seat and the video of installing and routing the power wire and landing the power wire to the battery, etc. So let's do this first real quick. This just pushes right out. There's pins, or there's clips that hold this in along the way. Before you do that, let's go ahead and remove this 10mm bolt up here though. So let's go ahead and remove this 10mm. And now let's just pop this trim panel piece out. Now that that's out, we're going to go ahead and clip over to show you how to remove the seat and show you how to run the power wire to the battery. To remove the bolts from the seat, it's a 10mm. So let's go ahead and remove the bolts. Here's the first bolt up in the front outside part. Second bolt is over here inside the rail. If you slide the seat forward, that's how you're going to be able to access that. The third bolt and the fourth bolt right there. All right, so let's go ahead and slide the seat back all the way. Let's pull the seat front forward. I'm going to lift the back of the tail of the bench up so that way there's more room for this to sit back to. All I did was lift the bench up. Now we can tilt the seat all the way back. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the heat warmer. All right, so there's two connectors here. There's this big black one here and the mustard colored one. Go ahead and push this tab inside here. You'll hear it click and just pull it right out. And then for this guy, pull this red piece back by pushing down. You have to push this little tab down as you pull it out and then pull that out. Swing the wire around. Now I go ahead and take the seat out. I want to remove this channel piece because I want to mount the, I want to route the wires underneath this channel piece here. So I'm going to remove this plastic channel. There's 1, 2, 3 10mm bolts to get this panel off of here. So let's go ahead and take that off. How I want to route is underneath this wire here. Same thing underneath here. And I want to route it forward. Just like so. You can tuck this up here because you're going to need to route this through the fire stop that's here. And that 9-wire is going to attach to, again, the factory amp that's underneath there. So now what we wanted to do is let's move on to the power install, right? So the power wires ran to this point. Now we need to get it through, get the end through the firewall and ran over to the battery. I'm going to go up to this hole right here. or I've already drilled through this grommet, so we're just going to go ahead and feed the wire through. You can just push it all the way through and grab it on the other side. So go ahead and just pull the remaining wire out through there. And there you go. The wire's through the engine compartment. All right, now we've got the power wire pulled into the engine compartment. We're gonna go ahead and route this up along the front here and install the fuse block. I've already installed some cable management zip tie stickies here along the route. So there's one here, there's one there, and that's where I'm just going to zip tie the wire to. So just going to run this underneath here. I'm going to go ahead and zip tie this along the way. Next, we're going to move to the other side to where we can mount the fuse block and attach the power wire to the battery terminal. All right, now we're over on the battery side, so let's go ahead and finish running the wire. I'm going to zip tie it to these last two spots here. Like I said earlier, we mounted our fuse block to this fuse bracket. We can supply this bracket, we'll have this as an option. It's not going to come with the kit just because it doesn't fit with some applications. It does not fit with the 392, and it does not fit with the 4XE. This being a Gladiator, it works here, and this does mount right in this spot here. So a couple things to prep for with the fuse before installing it. We want to go ahead and swing this fuse out of line so that way we can go ahead and connect it to the battery. And once we're done with the final install, done connecting everything inside to the amp, to the wire harness, etc., then we'll come back around and swing the fuse back around to connect it and fasten it down. Loosen both sides a little bit. And when you loosen this side, you'll notice it just swings. So it swings right around. Now we can leave it loose. So now I want to go ahead and get this mounted. Like I said, this mounts right here. This uses a 10 millimeter. And then it comes with another 10 millimeter that mounts right here. Now that's installed. So now we can run the power wire underneath here. And there's just enough slack to get that in to the block. Use the provided Allen key. Slide this in and tighten it down. And there you go. We can go ahead and attach this to the battery terminal. 10 millimeter. Loosen that bolt there. Let's go ahead and attach the power wire to the positive terminal now. And connect it right there. And it's 10 mil, tighten it down. All right, we're back. As you saw, the seat's been removed, the power has been ran. So now we're gonna go ahead and land the power onto the distribution block. We're gonna pull the power wire coming to this amplifier off the other side of the distribution block. There are two. Remember, one goes to the mono amp, one goes to the 4-channel. We're gonna land the ground, which is to this bolt right here. And we're gonna attach the speaker wire and the amp harness to the connections on the amplifier here. And I'll show you there are two different types of configurations, whether your Jeep is factory amplified or non-factory amplified. If you're factory amplified, you're gonna use the amp bypass harness, which is what we're gonna use here. And if you're non-factory amplified, you're gonna use the amp harness that goes from the amplifier directly to the pack module. We'll demonstrate that just so you'll see it in case you have that option. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's land the power wire from the battery. Remember, the fuse is not installed in the block at the battery. You want to leave that fuse out until you finish the grounding and the powering or the connections. At the very end, you can install that fuse in the battery. So let's get started here. Something to note here also, so this distribution block has these two fuses. One is a 40 amp and one is a 60 amp. Depending on the size of the 4-channel and the size of the mono, they'll determine which fuse you go into. So this is a 300 watt 4-channel amp. So for this one, we're gonna use the 40 amp. The other amplifier is a 500 watt. So for the other amplifier, we're gonna use the 60 amp. So let's prepare the 40 amp fuse side for this 4-channel amp. Again, when you're connecting these power ones, even though this fuse is in, make sure the fuse of the battery is not connected. Make sure that's not installed. Now let's go ahead and land this to the amplifier as well as the ground. Since we use Velcro tape, we can just pull this right off. Same thing with the power side. And again, your amplifier may be different than this one. So it's it may have a different orientation, may have a different location, but ground is ground. 12 volt is your power. So now we'll connect the remote wire. So since this is also connecting to the mono amplifier on the other side, you're gonna have 2 remote wires connected into this port. One remote wire is going to connect from here to the other mono amplifier. The other remote wire is included in the either amp bypass harness or in the amplifier harness to the pack module if you're non-amplified. So let's go ahead and use the factory amp bypass harness. This is the remote wire that's going to connect to the pack module. This is the remote wire that's on the speaker end side that's going to connect into the amplifier. All right, we're going to go ahead and connect the remote wires now. So you have 2 remote wires connecting into the 4-channel amp. One of the remote wires is attached to the speaker wire harness, the amp bypass harness in this case here. The other one is going to go routing from this remote port to the port on the mono amp on the other side. When you receive it from us, you'll have both of the wires connected. We just did that real quick here to connect them, but when you receive them from us in the bundle, it'll come with the ferrule connector on there. So let's go ahead and connect those both into here. All right, so let's go ahead and land the speaker wires. So as I said on the table earlier, this amp here is broken down into channel 1, 2, 3, and 4. So channel 1 is your left front area, which is in the Jeep, it's your dash and your knee speaker. And that's going to be white wires. Channel 2, that's going to be gray wires, and that's the right front area of the Jeep. That's your dash and your kick speaker. Channel 3, down below here, that's going to be green wire, and that is your left rear speaker, which is your sound bar. And channel 4 is purple, and that's going to be your right rear soundbar speakers. So let's land these positive and negative. If you're not aware, positive is a solid wire, and negative has the black stripe on it. So if you look at the white wires, solid wire is your positive, and the white with the black stripe, that is your negative. So let's start in the bottom because it's probably easier just to land those and then work your way to the top. So starting at the bottom, channel 3, that's your green wire. And there's detailed instructions that are on our installation guide page, so you can always revert back to the written guide as well. And if any updates occur, any changes are made, you're going to want to take a look at that anyway. So negative into here. Positive. Going over to channel 4 with our purple. Hard to see, but that's the negative here with the black stripe. It's the positive. Now going up here to channel 1, that's our white wire. then channel 2, right front, is our gray wire. All right, speaker wires are connected. Again, this is the factory amplified Jeep, so we're using the factory amp bypass harness. If you don't have the factory amplified, you're going to use this harness over here. Comes with the same exact connections. This connects to the pack module. I'll demonstrate once we get there. This one connects to where the factory amplifier is located. We'll show you that here in a second. So all the connections are made on the 4-channel amp. You can go ahead and just set this in its place. Don't worry about the cabling. Of course, we'll clean all that up. We can go ahead and land our ground wire onto the bolt right here. This is a 10 millimeter. Before you finish up, and this is a good example, make sure you give a little tug on each one of the wires to make sure that that little bolt that you tightened down held onto it. As you can see, this one did not. So it's a good example. You can give a little tug on each wire, make sure that they are firm in there, they're not going anywhere. Same thing with the remote wire, give a little tug, power wire, ground, everything is in. Let's go ahead also and connect the RCAs from the amplifier, and then everything will be connected to this amp, and we're ready to start prepping for the mono amp. The RCAs on this amp are here on the other side. So this is labeled channel 1, channel 2, channel 3, channel 4, left, right. So channel 1 and 2 are going to be your front speakers. Channel 3 and 4 are going to be your rear speakers. So we're going to go ahead and connect the RCAs to match that. So then note the RCA harness that we send out, we use this 6-channel RCA. It'll be labeled with pack CH41. This is the side that's going to connect to the pack module. If you have an aftermarket radio, this is the side that's going to connect to your aftermarket radio. You're not going to have a pack module. So this is all 6 channels here. These just separate out. So go ahead and just snip off the S one. Making sure not to cut the wire, of course. And just separate the sub, because these sub RCAs are going to connect from the mono amp to the pack module, or your aftermarket radio, whichever you have. So since this is the side that's going to the pack, this is the side that's going to go to the amplifier, with the front and the rear. So let's grab the front first. Channel 1 and 2 being the front, go red to red, blank into white. And now on the other side, 3 and 4, there's your rears, red to red, and the blank one into the white one. Now this amp is fully prepared. This amp bracket uses the factory bolts to mount back into place. You'll notice it's a little, it's not flat. You can bend this corner up and it fits the contour of the Jeep. So you just bend this up. Then it'll sit nice and flat. Just something that we hear a lot of. So we now need to run the power wire from the distribution block over to the mono amp that's going to be on the passenger side. So let's go ahead and land our power wire here. And what we'll do once that's landed, put the top back on, and then we can start routing the wiring through over to the passenger side. We'll send the RCAs that way. We'll send the power wire, of course, that way. We'll send the remote wire that way. And I'll move over to that side and we'll show you how to connect everything over there. So let's get this power wire. All right, we're gonna go ahead and route the wiring through the transmission tunnel here. There's plenty of spacing. I'm gonna use just a piece of wire to tape the power wire, the RCAs, and the remote wire too to push it through. If you look down inside of here, you can see all the way through. you'll see there's plenty of there's plenty of space to go through. All right, now we're going to move to the other side and start landing those wires on the amplifier. We're going to take the dash apart so we can get the factory radio out so we can connect the pack module, and we're going to carry on. Let's go ahead and land the wires here that we land on this amp and send the other wires to the back of the pack module, which is going to be the RCAs. So these RCAs are the ones from the 4-channel amplifier. These you can just pull all the way through. Leave a little bit of slack on the driver's side so you can just tuck it away. This is going to route up behind the glove box, and this is going to connect to the pack module, so just leave this aside for now. Now we'll land the power wire that's attached to the fuse block, distribution block over there, and we're going to also land the remote wire. That's the remote wire right here. Give it a pull to make sure it's in there solid. Let's go ahead and land the power wire on a 12 volt. And the ground wire. We can go ahead and connect the sub speaker wire also. So since we're running just one sub, we're going to go from the positive and the negative. That's going to be the provided sub wire. This amp has 2 connections, 2 terminals, so you can run 2 amplifiers here. We're running 1 amplifier, so we're going to go from 1 negative side and 1 positive side. On the speaker wire, the sub wire you get from us, it may be blue and black, it may be red and black, it may be yellow and black. Just know that your black is going to be your negative, your other color is going to be your positive, so negative and positive. Give it a little tug to make sure it's tight in there. Positive, negative, sub wire is connected. Power, remote wire, ground is connected. Let's go ahead and land our ground now. Same spot like as it had on the driver's side. This bolt right here is our ground. So we can go ahead and land the ground wire there. 10 millimeter again. Now we're going to go ahead and connect our RCAs using the sub RCA now, when they had the S on there. Remember, this tag is the tag side that's going to connect into either your aftermarket radio RCA ports or into the pack module. We have the pack module here, so it says CH pack 41 on it. That's going to connect to the pack. So we're going to grab the other end of these sub RCAs. I'm going to go black into white and red into red. And that is it for the connections to the amplifier. Now we can go ahead and route the RCAs up to the pack, but we need to take the factory radio out. Something else to notice here, this does fit, but you may need to manage some of the factory wiring in order to get this corner of the bracket up underneath here. You can either go on top and just bend this like we did on the driver's side, or just take this piece of carpeting and go underneath here, and then the corner of the bracket will go right underneath there as well. That way the holes line up. And if you feel you'll need to still bend this tip up here, bend this corner up here, just go ahead and bend that corner up a little bit. There you go, as long as the holes line up. All right, now it's time to take our factory radio out so we can connect the pack module, run the RCAs to connect to the pack module, connect the amp on wire. First, we're gonna drop the glove box. This is where the pack module is gonna mount behind after it connects to the radio. So to do that, if you haven't taken your glove box out, there's this little tab up here. You just push that tab and it comes out. There is an arm that's connected to here. This one doesn't have the arm connected, so if you have the arm on there, then there's a little button on here that pops the arm off. So this just comes right out. Then to take the radio out, we need to remove the bezel. To get the bezel off, we need to remove this trim panel piece below here. And to get this panel piece off, there's a trim piece underneath the steering wheel that this piece just needs to pop down to give this clearance to come out. So let's just pop this off. You just pull down, it yanks straight out. Now with the panel removal tool, you can just lift one of these corners on this piece here. And you can either disconnect it or just hang it out of the way, just hang it resting on something so it's not pulling on the wires. So there's 2 screws underneath here that are holding the bezel on. So remove these 2 screws. These are a Phillips head or a 7mm. Now there are 4 screws holding the factory radio in. I'm going to remove those 4 screws. What we want to get to is the factory connector right under here. So you're going to push this, there's on the side here, there's a little button. Push this button, it lifts this bridge piece up, and that pulls the connector right out. Now you're going to take the pack module T-harness. That's going to connect right into here. You're going to push that bridge piece down to lock it in. This is going to connect, attach right back into where the factory piece came out. And that's going to lock it into place. All right, so let's talk about these 2 connections here real quick. This connector here, this is the female connection that's on that T-harness that we attached. If you have a non-factory amplified system, you're going to receive this harness, like I mentioned earlier. Now you have already attached this to the amplifier, because this is the harness that you'll receive, versus the factory amplified bypass harness that we ran here. You're going to attach this to the amplifier. You're going to route this wire through the transmission tunnel with the RCAs. And you're going to route this wire up behind the glove box, and this male connector is going to attach to this female connector, just like that. Once this is connected from the amp harness, you're now going to take the remote wire, and this is going to plug into the amp on wire that's on the other end of the T-harness. That's going to plug into there. Now remember, this is routing up from the glove box. So you'll connect this first, because this is going to be dangling behind the glove box. This is connected to the pack module that's underneath there. I'm going to show the rest of it also. The only difference is if you have the non-factory amplified Jeep, so you don't have the factory subwoofer from the back, this is the harness that you're going to receive. So the routing is a little bit different from what we're going to show you next, which is installing the factory amplified bypass harness. This is regular non-factory amplified system. Again, connecting to the amplifier, routing through with your RCAs route, coming up through the glove box, connect the amp on wire to where the pack module connects to, and then connect the male connector onto the female connector that's a part of the T-harness. We're going to put this aside. You can leave these disconnected, doesn't matter. Since this is Jeep is factory amplified, we're not using or we're not even touching these speaker wires, so this can be disconnected or connected, it doesn't matter. The factory speaker wire that we're picking up in this Jeep is coming off the factory amplifier on the other side of the steering wheel, which is what we're going to get into after we mount this pack module. So let's go ahead and route this wire. This is going to drip down behind the vent here, and this is going to come out into the glove box. You're just going to find a pathway, the path of least resistance. You probably just put your hand up one side, put your fingers on the other side, and find the pathway to where you can touch. Once you do that, I can touch my fingers here. Now just stick this wire back behind down here. And here it's down here now. I'm gonna go ahead and screw the factory radio back in to its slot. We don't need to get back behind here for anything else. We can button this up afterwards. You may just want to leave this down until after we power test it, just in case you need to get back in there. We can go ahead and connect the pack module to the other end of the harness. But there are these dip switches. If your Jeep is factory amplified, all dip switches need to be up. If your Jeep is non-factory amplified, no factory subwoofer in the back, dip switch number 4 needs to be down. That's the only adjustment to this module whatsoever. Go ahead and connect it. Now we can route the RCAs up through a glove box and connect the RCAs. And you'll see it starts lighting up and doing all sorts of just activation modes. I'm gonna just push this out of the way so I can show you the path for the RCAs. We're gonna pull this carpeting down so we can tuck the RCAs up afterwards. And grab the end of the RCAs here. There's a channel, so pathway. I stick my hand up underneath the glove box and reach this air vent where the vent is underneath here. Just go right behind that. And you can stick your fingers up and you can see where my fingers come through the other side. That's where I'm aiming towards. And then there's plenty of room back behind here where you can pull all the RCA slack. Just wind it up here. You can zip tie it back behind here. And just pushing the RCAs up, and there you go. So this is both sets of RCAs. This is the 4-channel, the 2 pair coming from the 4-channel amp, and the single pair coming from the mono amp. So you have all of the RCAs are coming up. And we'll just tuck it back behind the carpeting here. We'll come back through and we'll clean all this up. So for now, let's go ahead, let's connect it to the pack module, and then we can make a swoop around and dress up all the wiring afterwards. Grabbing the subwire, labeled S, this has the tag on it. You're gonna go ahead and connect that to the sub ports, matching red to red like we did on the amplifier, and black to white. And moving on to the other 2 channels. So this has rear and this has front. So the rear right and the rear left. On the RCAs it's marked front and rear. So let's grab our rear. The rear red. The rear black is the white. And now the front. Making sure that this is the F that we're grabbing, which is this one here. And this is F. This is right, red, black, white. Make sure they're seated in firmly. Make sure that's seated in firmly. The only thing left to connect now is the remote wire, and this is going to come over from the amp bypass harness, which we'll install after we get this tucked away. So I'm just going to wrap this, zip tie it, and then tuck it away. And we'll leave this out until I connect the amp wire, and then we can just put a piece of Velcro on the back here and stick it up top, or zip tie it to something, whatever works out best for you. You can find a spot to zip tie this up or Velcro this up to. There's a vent right there. As long as this is left available to you or accessible, now you can grab and plug the remote wire in once we route that around. So this side is pretty much done. You can go ahead and tuck the carpeting away. All right, once that's tucked away, let's go ahead and just clean up a little bit of this wiring here, and then we'll be done on this side. I like to use these little sticky tabs. You can pick these up off Amazon. Just grab a handful of them, and then you can line these up. So this wire here, this is for the subwoofer. This is going to route along the trim panel here and then to any subwoofer that you have. You know, this video here is particularly informing you about the installation of the amplifiers, not necessarily for the subwoofer. However, our packages are going to include a number of subwoofer options. So depending on which subwoofer you choose, and if you have the Gladiator, if you have the 2-door, if you have the 4-door Wranglers, will determine where your subwoofer is mounting. So the routing of this wire is really just going to vary depending on your build, on your system. So we're just going to leave this on the side here, but you know, ultimately you're going to route this along the side, tuck it underneath the trim panels, tuck it underneath the carpeting, and find the best route to your subwoofer. So this side is pretty much done. Let's move over to the driver's side so we can route and connect the factory amplifier bypass harness. We're back on the driver's side seat because we need to run our factory amp bypass harness from the amplifier to the factory amplifier, which is located underneath the steering wheel column on the left-hand side near where your knee would be. So let's route this wiring along the trim panel. You're going to route it underneath this plastic piece just as you did for the battery power cable. That's what we suggest, of course. You can just go underneath here. That snaps right back down. There is a 10mm bolt that holds this piece down to here. Which is this guy here. I'll come back and tighten this in a little bit. Now we're going to go ahead and connect the factory amp bypass harness to the connectors that are attached to the factory amplifier. There's 3 connections that are attached to the factory amplifier. You're going to pull out 2 and connect them into our harness here. After we do that, we can dress up the cable, we can zip tie it up there. But this remote wire then needs to be routed up underneath the steering wheel column, through the center console, and over to the glove box. This needs to connect to the remote wire, the amp-on wire, that is on the pack module harness. So there are 3 connectors of the factory amplifier. You're going to remove the 2 on the left, not the white one on the right. So you're going to not remove this one. You're going to remove these 2 here, right here and right here. And there's a little button right to press right here. Just press the button and pull out. There's one, the other one. Now we're going to connect these 2 to our bypass harness. Let's go ahead and connect these into our harness. Clean the wiring up. We'll zip tie these up here so they're not, of course, hitting the pedals. All right, all we're doing now is routing the remote wire from the amp bypass harness up through the steering column, through the center console area here, to the bottom, and then over to the glove box to connect in. So I've just cut the twist tie off. I routed it underneath there. I just zip tied along the side. And now we're just going to kind of go right along the bottom here, and I'm just going to zip tie it to this bar once I get it pulled through. Now it's just, you can grab it here. I'm going to push it up. I'm going to end up coming right through here. So if you stick your hand up here, the finger sticks up there, and grab the remote wire there, and just pull it on through. And then we're going to navigate through the wires. The same way we came up here, we're going to go down on the other side, and that's going to lead into the glove box. So I'm going to toss this over here, and I'll meet you over there. All right, so we're going to go through that same slot up here, and you can stick your fingers in here. I can touch finger to finger. So I'm just going to go right in there. There you go, pulled it through. Now I can just connect it onto the bullet connector that's attached to, this is the pack harness. And there you go. Now I can zip tie this, clean this up, and I can just stick it right in the back there. And you can just tuck it right behind there. You can zip tie it somewhere else, whatever works for you. Now it's time to power test, and then we can do any final buttoning up, wire management, and put it back together. Prior to testing power, of course, we need to finish the fuse connection here. So let's go ahead and swing this fuse over. Just like so. Fuse is in. Let's go ahead and just tighten it down. And tighten this side down. There we go. Power is done. We should be able to go ahead and test our power now. We'll do a quick power test, make sure everything is connected correctly. So now we're just going to go ahead and turn the accessories on, make sure we get power light on the 4-channel and the power light on the mono before we button everything up. Accessories on, 4-channel kicked on, and the mono kicked on. There we go, successful power. Now we can shut it down. All right, amps are in, power test was successful, so we're good to go to button it up. I already started managing the wires. I zip tied them here, right? You may want to wait to do that until the power test, but I just had to because it was bothering me, so I went ahead and started cleaning it up anyway. A couple of last things to manage here is just the power wire. There's a great bit of space underneath this air vent here, so I kind of like to tuck this big thick wire underneath the air vent. Just to give you an example, you know, pop the carpet off. You can lift the vent up, and there's plenty of spacing underneath here. So that's where, you know, we'll make it pretty, of course, but just to give you an idea, there's plenty of space underneath there. So that's where we'll stash that. We'll manage this wire underneath here as well, so this will be cleaned up. So last couple things to do is just button that up over there, put the seats in, of course, put this trim panel piece back together, and put the dash piece back on, and we'll be done. So we're going to go ahead and jam that out real quick. There you go. So before we put the seat back on, like I said, now is a good time to go ahead and set up your amplifier to set your adjustments. As each amplifier is different, we're not going to walk through exactly to set this one up here, but we do have an install guide that's going to walk you through how to understand setting up an amp and how to set up your particular amp based on your listening, your style, and your speakers. So you can go to our install guide, which we'll post the link down in the description. One last thing to mention before we put the seats back on, the pack module does come with the bass knob, so if you want to adjust the volume, the bass on your sub, you can connect this to the pack module. We usually don't get into these so much. What you can also do is on the mono amplifier, you can add a bass knob into that, and pretty much each one of the brands have their own bass knob that is compatible with their amplifier. Alpine has their own knob, Kicker has their own knob, etc. So we'll have that as the options on the product page, so you can select to install and to include a bass knob if you choose. So let's go ahead and get our seats in now. All right, everybody, dual amp install is complete. This applies for the JL and the JT. Like I said before, the years 18 to 23 for the JL and 20 to 23 for the Gladiator. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope you saw how easy that was to install 2 amplifiers using our Trail 7 plug and play bundle. If you're interested in picking up a dual amp setup for your Jeep, please visit us at www.trail7.com. Until next time, I'll see you out there.